Admiral stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewing screen, he watched 12,000 warships of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet move in perfect formation. They were entering an uncharted region of space that the galaxy called the Orion Spur. "Admiral, we are detecting primitive radio signals from the 3rd planet of this yellow star system," his sensor officer reported. Made a dismissive sound. His scales shifted from blue to a bored gray. Another primitive species, another easy conquest. The Dominion had done this 1,000 times before. They would study the creatures, catalog their resources, and add their world to the Empire's holdings. "What is their technology level?" asked. "Faster than light, Admiral. They appear to be using chemical rockets and basic nuclear power. Their most advanced weapons are explosive projectiles." Laughter spread across the bridge. The officers found it amusing. A species that had not even discovered how to bend space was not a threat. They were barely more than animals. "Send a message to Concord Command," ordered. "Tell them we have found a primitive civilization designated Sol 3. We are investigating." The message was sent. It traveled through the quantum relay network that connected the entire galaxy. It reached the Galactic Concord's central database and was filed under routine expansion reports. It was the last message anyone would ever receive from the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 3 standard months passed. The Concorde grew curious. Admiral was known for his detailed reports. He enjoyed bragging about his conquests, but there had been nothing from him since that first transmission. The Concorde dispatched probe drones to investigate. These small machines were equipped with the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. They could detect a ship's energy signature from half a light year away. They could find debris smaller than a fist floating in the void. The drones found nothing. No ships, no debris, no bodies, no distress signals, no quantum signatures. 12,000 warships and over 2 million soldiers had simply vanished. It was as if they had never existed at all. The Galactic Concorde held an emergency session to discuss the mystery. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber on the capital world. They argued and debated and offered theories. "A spatial anomaly," suggested the ambassador. "The Orion Spur is poorly mapped. Perhaps they encountered a fold in subspace." "A navigational error," offered another delegate. "They may have flown into a black hole." "Perhaps they found something valuable and are maintaining communication silence," said a cynical voice from the back. The theories were many, but none of them considered the truth. None of them imagined that a primitive species with chemical rockets could pose any danger to the mightiest fleet in the sector. Then the human arrived. Her name she was small by galactic standards, with brown skin and dark hair and eyes that held no fear. She walked into the Concorde chamber as if she belonged there, flanked by 2 other humans in simple gray uniforms. The chamber fell silent. No one had seen creatures like these before. They walked upright on 2 legs. They had no scales, no shells, no natural armor of any kind. They looked soft and fragile. "I am Ambassador," she announced. Her voice was calm and clear. "I represent the United Earth Government. We are requesting formal membership in the Galactic Concorde." Confused murmurs filled the chamber. Where had these creatures come from? How had they traveled here without faster-than-light technology? The Concorde speaker, a massive creature named, leaned forward. "You are from the Sol system, the planet designated Sol 3. "We call it Earth," replied. "Yes." "How did you arrive here? Our records indicate your species has not developed FTL travel." Smiled. It was a small smile, but something about it made several delegates uncomfortable. "We have made some recent advancements." "What do you know of the fleet that entered your system?" demanded. Reached into her uniform and produced a data crystal. She placed it on the central podium. "This contains a full account of what happened, but I will summarize for you now." The chamber grew very quiet. "The fleet entered our solar system with hostile intentions," said. "We warned them to leave. They refused. They attacked our outer colonies. We defended ourselves." "You defended yourselves?" The ambassador rose from his seat, his scales flushing red with anger. "Against 12,000 warships, you primitive creatures could not scratch the paint on a single cruiser." Turned to face him, her expression did not change. "We returned your fleet's survivors, all 37 of them. They can tell you what happened. The rest of your people chose to fight. We recommend you do not send another fleet." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted in disbelief. The ambassador demanded that the humans be arrested. Others laughed openly at the absurdity of her claims. 37 survivors, out of 2 million soldiers. It was impossible. It was a lie. It had to be. "You expect us to believe," said slowly, "that a species we had never heard of, a species that was using chemical rockets just months ago, destroyed one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy." "I expect nothing," replied. "I am simply delivering a message and a warning. What you believe is your own choice, but I strongly advise you to believe it." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her two companions followed. "Wait," called out. "You cannot simply leave. We have questions." Paused at the door, she looked back over her shoulder. "The data crystal contains everything you need to know. The survivors have been delivered to your medical facilities. They are traumatized, but they can speak. Ask them what they saw." "And if we do not believe your ridiculous claims?" the ambassador snarled. His expression remained calm, but her eyes grew cold. "Then you will learn the truth the hard way, as Admiral did." She walked out. The chamber remained in chaos for hours. The data crystal was analyzed and dismissed as fabricated. The 37 survivors were interviewed, but their stories were considered too insane to be true. They spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere, of weapons that could not be stopped, of humans who fought with a ferocity that made no sense. By the end of the session, the Galactic Concord had reached a conclusion. The fleet had been lost to a spatial anomaly. The humans were primitive liars seeking attention. Their warning was meaningless. Ambassador became a joke across 1,000 worlds. Her calm delivery of impossible claims was mocked on entertainment broadcasts. Comedians imitated her voice. Children played games where they pretended to destroy imaginary fleets. The galaxy laughed. But in the dark corners of space, in the classified files that few could access, a question remained unanswered. If the humans were lying, where were the ships? Where were the bodies? Where was the debris? And why did the 37 survivors wake up screaming every night? 3 years passed since delivered her warning. In that time, she had become the most famous joke in the galaxy. Her face appeared on comedy shows. Her words were quoted in mockery. "We recommend you do not send another fleet" became a phrase that children used when playing war games. The Dominion was not laughing. They had lost their pride along with their fleet. The other species whispered behind their backs. How embarrassing, they said, to blame primitive apes for a navigational disaster. The must be desperate to save face. Dominion commander refused to accept the official story. He had known Admiral personally, was the best navigator in the fleet. He would never fly into a spatial anomaly. Something else had happened in that system, something the Conquered did not want to believe. Assembled a new fleet. This one was smaller but more advanced. 2,000 of the Dominion's finest warships, equipped with the latest weapons and shields. He would discover the truth about what happened too. He would make the humans pay. The fleet entered the Sol system with weapons charged and shields at full power. They expected resistance. They expected primitive rockets and clumsy attempts at defense. They found nothing. The system appeared empty. No ships, no satellites, no orbital stations, just 8 planets circling a yellow star, silent and still. "Where are they?" demanded. His sensor officer shook his head. "Nothing on scans, Commander. The 3rd planet shows signs of civilization, but I detect no military presence anywhere in the system." "They are hiding," decided. "Cowards, begin systematic scanning, find them." For 6 days, the fleet searched the system. They found cities on the 3rd planet. They found colonies on the 4th planet and the moons of the larger worlds. But they found no ships, no weapons, no military forces of any kind. On the 7th day, received a transmission. A human face appeared on his screen. It was a man with pale skin and gray hair. His expression was bored, almost tired. "This is Admiral James of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. "You are in violation of our territorial space. Leave now and you will not be harmed. This is your only warning." Laughed, "Warning? You dare warn me? Where is your fleet, human? Where are your mighty weapons? I see nothing but empty space." Admiral sighed. He looked like a teacher dealing with a foolish student. "Commander, I am trying to save your life and the lives of your crew. They have already lost 1 fleet in this system. Please do not make us repeat that lesson." "Lies and tricks," snarled. You have no fleet, you have no weapons, you are nothing but primitives playing at being warriors. When I am done with you, the galaxy will know the truth. They will have their revenge." He cut the transmission. "All ships," commanded, "begin orbital bombardment of the third planet. Destroy their cities, show them the price of their arrogance." The fleet moved into position. 2,000 warships aimed their weapons at the blue and green world below. They prepared to rain fire upon billions of innocent beings. They never fired a single shot. It happened so fast that none of the survivors could properly describe it later. One moment the fleet was in perfect formation. The next moment, ships were exploding. Weapons were firing from everywhere and nowhere. Projectiles traveling at impossible speeds tore through shields like they were made of paper. They tried to fight back. They fired their plasma cannons into empty space. They launched missiles at targets that did not appear on their sensors. They screamed for help on channels that had suddenly filled with static. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, one ship remained. It was flagship, damaged but intact. A human shuttle approached and docked with his vessel. Armed humans in gray armor walked onto his bridge. Admiral was with them. "I told you to leave," said quietly. He sounded almost sad. "I told you that you would not be harmed. Why do your people never listen?" Was on his knees, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. His scales had turned white with terror. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do this? Where did you come from?" "We were always here, Commander. We were watching you from the moment you entered our system. We hoped you would turn back. We hoped you would choose peace," shook his head. "You chose war instead. What will you do with me?" "We will send you home. You and the 42 other survivors from your fleet. You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell them that we do not want war, but we will not allow anyone to threaten our world." The same thing happened twice more over the next 7 years. The hegemony sent a fleet of 5,000 ships. They were overconfident and aggressive. They lasted 11 minutes. 81 survivors were returned. The collective of minds sent an automated armada of 10,000 drone ships. They believed that removing living crews would give them an advantage. The drones were captured intact. The collective received them back 1 week later to display a single message on every screen: "Please stop." A mercenary coalition funded by wealthy nobles sent 3,000 ships crewed by the most vicious fighters in the galaxy. They were professionals who had never lost a battle. They lasted 19 minutes. The mercenary guild received 200 survivors and a bill for cleanup services. Each time, a human diplomat appeared at the Concord to deliver the same message. Each time, they returned a handful of traumatized survivors. Each time, they warned the galaxy not to send more ships. And each time, the Concord dismissed the reports as exaggeration. But the mockery was beginning to fade. The jokes about were not as funny anymore. Too many fleets had vanished. Too many survivors had returned with haunted eyes and broken minds. Traders who passed near human space began to share strange stories. They spoke of sensor ghosts that appeared and disappeared. They spoke of ships that seemed to watch them from impossible distances. They spoke of a feeling of being hunted. A merchant captain claimed that he had been boarded by humans in deep space. They had been polite, he said. They had inspected his cargo, purchased some items for gold, and left without violence. But before they departed, their leader had given him a message. "Tell your people that we know they are planning something big. Tell them it will not work. Tell them to choose peace while peace is still an option." The captain delivered the message to the Concord. It was added to a classified file that was growing larger with each passing month. The file was labeled with 2 words that sent chills through those who read it. Project. Someone, somewhere in the Concord Intelligence Bureau, was beginning to understand. Someone was asking the questions that should have been asked years ago. What were the humans really capable of? Where had they come from? And most importantly, why did they keep offering mercy to enemies who wanted to destroy them? The answers would terrify the galaxy. But the galaxy was not ready to hear them. Not yet. It would take one more disaster, one more humiliation before the Concord would finally listen. And by then, it would almost be too late. Senior analyst was not important. He was a low-ranking officer in the Concord Intelligence Bureau, assigned to cases that no one else wanted. His species, were known for their patience and attention to detail. They were not known for ambition or bravery. When his supervisor assigned him to the human mystery, knew it was punishment. The case was a joke. Every serious analyst believed the vanished fleets were victims of spatial anomalies. Humans were primitives. The survivors were traumatized liars. There was nothing to investigate. But was patient, and he was thorough. He began by collecting every piece of information he could find about the Sol system. Star charts, astronomical surveys, ancient records from species that had mapped that region of space thousands of years ago. He built a complete picture of the system and its history. What he found made him uncomfortable. The Sol system had been marked in conquered databases for over 50,000 years. It was listed under a category called Future Resources. This was a polite way of saying it was scheduled for eventual conquest. The third planet had been flagged as a potential colony world once its native life forms were removed. But that was not the disturbing part. The disturbing part was the 17 extinction markers scattered throughout the system. Found evidence of 17 different civilizations that had once existed in or near the Sol system. Ruins on asteroids, ancient structures on moons, faint traces of technology buried beneath the surfaces of dead worlds. All of them had been destroyed long ago. All of them had been erased from the records. Someone had been harvesting intelligent species in that region of space for millions of years, and someone had been covering it up. Buried this discovery deep in his files. He was not brave enough to pursue it, but it changed the way he looked at the human mystery. Perhaps the galaxy was not as safe as everyone believed. Perhaps there were secrets that powerful beings wanted to keep hidden. He turned his attention to the survivors. There were 473 of them now, gathered from the various fleets that had entered human space. Most refused to speak. Those who did speak were dismissed as insane. Their stories were too impossible to believe. Believed them. He spent 6 months interviewing every survivor who would talk to him. He recorded their stories. He compared their accounts. He looked for patterns and consistencies. What he found was terrifying. The survivors described humans as relentless and efficient. They did not fight with rage or hatred. They fought with cold precision, like machines built for a single purpose. Their weapons made no sense. Solid metal projectiles that moved faster than plasma bolts. Explosives that ignored shields, electronic attacks that crashed entire ship networks in seconds. But the most disturbing detail was the human behavior after battle. Every survivor described the same thing. After the fighting stopped, the humans would board the remaining ships. They would provide medical care to the wounded. They would treat their prisoners with respect. They would explain calmly and patiently that they did not want war. They only wanted to be left alone. Then they would send the survivors home with a warning. Why, asked a survivor named, why did they spare you? Scales had never returned to their normal color. They remained a sickly white, the color of permanent fear. They wanted us to deliver a message, he said. They wanted us to tell our people the truth, but our people did not listen. They never listen. What was the message? Looked at with empty eyes. They said they have been watching us for 200 years. They said they know everything about us. Our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. They said they prepared for this moment since before we knew they existed. Felt cold. 200 years? That is impossible. We only discovered their radio signals 15 years ago. They discovered us long before we discovered them, said. They intercepted our communications. They studied our wars. They learned our languages. By the time we arrived in their system, they knew us better than we knew ourselves. Spent another year researching human biology and history. He used every source he could find, including classified files that he was not supposed to access. The picture that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans had evolved on what scientists called a Category 12. This was the highest danger rating in the classification system. Their planet had crushing gravity, a poisonous atmosphere filled with corrosive oxygen, extreme temperature variations, constant natural disasters, and predators on every continent. Most intelligent species evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates. They developed slowly, protected by gentle environments. Humans were different. They had been forged by endless struggle. Every generation faced extinction. Every individual was a survivor. Their bodies reflected this brutal history. They could heal from injuries that would kill other species. They could function without sleep for days. They could survive in temperatures that would freeze or boil most galactic citizens. Their endurance was legendary even among species. But their greatest advantage was not physical, it was mental. Humans were pattern recognition engines. Their brains had evolved to identify threats, analyze weaknesses, and develop countermeasures. When faced with a superior enemy, they did not surrender or flee. They adapted, they learned, they found ways to win. Compiled his findings into a report. It was 3,000 pages long. He titled it A Complete Analysis of the Human Threat. His conclusions were clear and terrifying. The humans were not lucky. They were not lying. They were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. They had spent 2 centuries preparing for war with the conquered. They had developed weapons specifically designed to defeat galactic technology. They had trained soldiers who could fight in conditions that would kill any other species. And they did not want to fight at all. That was the part that confused the most. The humans kept offering peace. They kept returning survivors. They kept warning the galaxy to stay away. They were not conquerors or empire builders. They simply wanted to protect their home. But if pushed too far, knew what they would become. He submitted his report to the Intelligence Bureau with a single recommendation. It was written in red text, the highest priority marker. Do not engage, under any circumstances, ever. The Bureau forwarded the report to the conquered High Council. The Council read it carefully. They discussed it for 3 days. They consulted with military experts and scientific advisors. Then they dismissed it as hysteria. Was reassigned to a remote monitoring station on the edge of civilized space. His report was classified and buried. The official position remained unchanged. The humans were primitives who had gotten lucky. The vanished fleets were victims of spatial anomalies. There was no threat. The Council had already made their decision. They would assemble the largest military force in galactic history. They would enter human space with overwhelming power. They would crush the humans and end the embarrassment once and for all. Watched the preparations from his distant station. He saw the ships gathering. He heard the confident speeches. He read the propaganda that promised swift victory. And he began writing letters to his family, because he knew he would never see them again. The galaxy was about to learn the truth about humanity, but the lesson would cost more than anyone could imagine. The combined galactic armada was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of known space. 2 million warships from 47 different species gathered at the staging point. Dreadnoughts the size of cities floated beside nimble fighters. Troop transports carried armies that could conquer entire worlds. The fleet stretched across millions of kilometers, a wall of metal and firepower that blocked out the stars. Admiral of the Hegemony had been chosen to lead this historic mission. She was the most decorated military commander in the conquered. She had never lost a battle. Her reputation was built on 100 victories against enemies across the galaxy. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal, and watched her fleet prepare for departure. Pride filled her 4 hearts. This would be her greatest triumph. The primitives would be crushed. The mystery would be solved. The galaxy would be safe. Admiral, her communications officer said, "We are receiving a transmission from Earth." Smiled, "They wish to surrender already. Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. It was a woman with short black hair and calm dark eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations or medals. "I am Director of Earth's Unified Defense Command," the woman said. "I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of humanity." "There will be no negotiation," replied. "You will surrender unconditionally or you will be destroyed. Those are your only options." Director nodded slowly as if she had expected this answer. "Admiral, I must warn you that entering our space with hostile intentions will result in the destruction of your fleet. We have tried to avoid this outcome. We have returned your survivors. We have offered peace, but you continue to choose war." "Your threats are meaningless," said. "You have never faced a force like this. 2 million ships, 47 species, the combined might of the entire galaxy. What can your primitive world do against such power?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. "Admiral, I am going to tell you something that your government has kept hidden from your people. Over the past 15 years, we have captured and analyzed technology from every fleet that entered our system. We know the capabilities of every ship in your armada. We know the specifications of every weapon. We have developed countermeasures for all of them." Laughed, "Impossible." "Furthermore," continued, "we have had agents aboard your ships for the past 3 months. They have been sabotaging your faster-than-light drives. When the battle begins, you will not be able to retreat. I am telling you this now so that you understand. If you proceed, there will be no escape." The laughter died in his throat. She looked at her officers. Their expressions showed doubt for the first time. "Lies," said, but her voice was less certain. "You are trying to frighten us into retreat." "I am trying to save 2 million lives," said. "Yours included. Please, Admiral, turn your fleet around, go home, tell your council that we want peace. That is all we have ever wanted." Straightened her spine. She was a warrior. She did not flee from battle because of threats and tricks. "Your deception has failed, human. Prepare to face the judgment of the galaxy." She cut the transmission. "All ships," commanded, "proceed to the Sol system, attack formation, destroy everything." The Galactic Armada moved forward. 2 million ships entered faster than light travel together, creating a wave of distorted space that could be detected across the sector. It was a display of power meant to terrify any watching enemy. They emerged in the Sol system, expecting to find a frightened, primitive world waiting for destruction. They found something else entirely. At first, there was nothing. The system appeared empty just as it had appeared to every previous fleet. The 8 planets orbited their yellow star in silence. No ships, no defenses, no sign of the enemy. Then the killing began. Ships started exploding without warning. Dreadnoughts that had survived 100 battles simply came apart, their hulls torn open by projectiles that moved too fast to see. Fighters vanished in clouds of debris. Transport ships carrying millions of soldiers became tombs in seconds. The Galactic Armada tried to fight back. They fired their weapons in every direction. Plasma bolts and missiles and energy beams filled the void, but they were shooting at nothing. Their sensors showed empty space. Their targeting computers found no enemies. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They emerged from hiding places that should have been impossible. Ships appeared from inside gas giants, where the pressure should have crushed any vessel. Fighters launched from asteroids that had seemed like dead rocks. Attack craft rose from the upper atmosphere of planets, where the heat should have melted any hull. The human weapons made no sense. They used solid projectiles, metal slugs accelerated to near-light speeds. These mass drivers ignored shields designed to stop energy weapons. They punched through armor like it was made of cloth. A single human destroyer could kill a dreadnought with one well-aimed shot. But the projectiles were not the worst of it. The humans had electronic warfare capabilities that the galaxy had never imagined. They broadcast signals that crashed computer systems. They sent commands that turned the Armada's own weapons against itself. Ships began firing on their allies. Navigation systems went insane, sending vessels into collisions. Watched her fleet die around her. 2 million ships became 1 million. 1 million became 500,000. The battle had been raging for less than an hour. "Admiral," her navigation officer screamed, "the FTL drives are not responding. We cannot retreat." The human had been telling the truth. They were trapped. Tried to rally her remaining forces. She ordered them to form defensive formations. She called for reinforcements that would never come. She did everything a brilliant commander should do. It was not enough. Then the humans deployed their final weapon. Saw it happen on her sensors. A wave of energy expanded from somewhere deep in the system. It was not like any weapon she had ever seen. It did not burn or explode or destroy. It simply erased. Ships caught in the wave vanished. They did not explode. They did not leave debris. They simply stopped existing. Whole formations blinked out of reality like candles being snuffed. The Galactic Armada had called this mission a crusade. The humans called their weapon the silence. The wave passed through the remaining fleet in seconds. When it was over, 800 ships remained out of 2 million. They floated in the void, damaged and confused, surrounded by empty space where their allies had been. Collapsed in her command chair. Her scales had turned gray with shock. Around her, officers wept and screamed and prayed to gods who did not answer. A human shuttle approached the Eternal. It docked without resistance. There was no fight left in the survivors. Director walked onto the bridge. She looked at the destruction visible through the viewing screen. Her expression showed no triumph, no satisfaction. She looked tired. She looked sad. "I told you," she said quietly. "I warned you. Why did you not listen?" Could not answer. She could barely breathe. "You will return to the conquered," said. You and the other survivors, you will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that this was their last warning. What was that weapon? Whispered. What did you do to our ships? Did not answer directly. Instead, she gestured to her officers. They began carving something into the hull of the flagship, using tools that cut through metal like water. A message said, "For your counsel, so there can be no misunderstanding." When the survivors finally limped home to conquered space, the other species saw what had been carved into the Eternal's hull. The words were written in perfect galactic common, each letter 3 meters tall. Last warning. The galaxy had sent its mightiest fleet to destroy humanity. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. And the lesson was not over yet. The galactic conquered was dying, not from human weapons but from fear. Trade routes had collapsed. Species that had been allies for now looked at each other with suspicion. The military that had protected civilized space for 10,000 years was gone, erased by a weapon that no one understood. The economy crashed. Governments fell. Chaos spread across 1,000 worlds. And above it all hung a single question: what would the humans do next? The survivors of the combined galactic armada had returned with stories that spread like fire. They spoke of ships that appeared from impossible places. They spoke of weapons that could not be stopped. They spoke of the silence, a wave of energy that made 2 million ships simply vanish. But the most terrifying thing they reported was not the human technology. It was the human behavior. The humans had not invaded. They had not followed the survivors home. They had not demanded surrender or tribute. They had simply let the broken fleet limp back to conquered space with a message carved into its flagship. Last warning. What kind of species wins a war and asks for nothing? What kind of power destroys the mightiest fleet in history and does not press its advantage? The conquered could not understand. Their entire civilization was built on conquest and domination. The idea of fighting only for defense was alien to them. The conquered council met in emergency session. The great chamber that had once held representatives from hundreds of species was nearly empty. Many delegates had fled to there, hoping that distance would protect them. Those who remained looked broken and afraid. Speaker addressed the chamber. His voice, once commanding and confident, was weak and tired. "We have received a communication from Earth. The humans have requested a formal meeting to discuss peace." The word hung in the air like a foreign sound. "They wish to negotiate?" someone asked. "After what they did to us?" "They claim they never wanted war," said. "They claim they only defended themselves. They wish to join the conquered as equal members and establish permanent peaceful relations." "And if we refuse?" Did not answer. He did not need to. Everyone in the chamber knew what would happen if they refused. 3 days later, a human delegation arrived at the conquered capital. They came in a single ship, small and unassuming. It landed in the central plaza without requesting permission. No one tried to stop it. The delegation was led by Director. She walked into the conquered chamber with 4 human officers at her side. They wore simple gray uniforms with no weapons visible. They looked calm and professional, like diplomats arriving for a routine meeting. But every eye in the chamber was fixed on them with terror. Stood at the central podium. She looked around at the assembled delegates, at the empty seats, at the fear on every face. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. "I know you are afraid," she said. "I know you think we have come to demand your surrender. We have not. We have come to explain the truth that your governments have hidden from you for 50,000 years. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the podium. Ancient ruins, dead worlds, the remains of civilizations that had been erased from history. Within our own solar system, we discovered the remains of 17 intelligent species. They built cities. They developed technology. They reached for the stars, and they were all destroyed." The images changed. They showed documents written in galactic common dated thousands of years ago. Schedules, plans, lists of target worlds, and estimated harvest dates. These species were not killed by natural disasters or their own mistakes. They were systematically exterminated by the civilizations that now make up your conquered. Their worlds were stripped of resources. Their people were erased. Their history was buried so deep that no one would ever know they existed. Murmurs of shock and denial filled the chamber, but continued. Earth was on that list. Your records show our world scheduled for harvesting within the next 2 centuries. We were supposed to develop just enough to be useful, then be eliminated like all the others." She paused to let the words sink in. "We discovered these records 200 years ago when we first intercepted your communications. We realized that the galaxy was not a place of wonder and opportunity. It was a hunting ground, and we were the prey." "So what did you do?" asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "We prepared," said simply. "We studied your technology, we analyzed your tactics, we developed weapons that could counter everything you had, and we waited." "You could have hidden," someone said. "You could have fled to another galaxy." Shook her head. "Running would only delay the inevitable. Sooner or later you would have found us. We decided that when you came, we would be ready, not to conquer you, not to destroy you, just to make you understand that we would not be easy victims." "And the weapon?" Admiral spoke from her seat. She had been present for every session since her return, sitting in silence, her scales still gray with trauma. "The silence? What did you do to our ships?" Turned to face her. "That is the other truth I came to reveal. The silence is not a weapon of destruction. It is a transit system." Confused murmurs filled the chamber. "We discovered a fold in spacetime," explained. "A pocket dimension where matter can be stored indefinitely. Your ships were not destroyed. They were relocated." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and accusations, raised her hand for silence. 2 million ships and their crews are alive. They are trapped in this pocket dimension, unable to escape but otherwise unharmed. They are hostages. "Hostages?" repeated. "You took 2 million people hostage." "We took them alive when we could have killed them," corrected. "We gave you mercy when you came to destroy us, and now we are offering you a choice." She deactivated the holographic display and faced the chamber directly. "Earth will join the conquered as an equal member. We will share our technology. We will contribute to galactic civilization. We will be your allies and partners, not your enemies." "And in return," asked. "In return, you will end the harvesting of developing species. You will allow young civilizations to grow and join the galactic community on their own terms. You will stop treating the universe as your personal hunting ground." "And if we refuse?" His expression did not change, but her voice grew cold. "The pocket dimension has an exit point. We can choose where that exit opens. If you refuse our terms or if you ever threaten Earth again, we will open that exit inside the core of your sun." Silence fell over the chamber. 2 million ships materializing inside a star would cause a supernova that would sterilize the entire conquered home system. "You would kill billions," said. "You would commit genocide." "You are coming to kill billions of us," replied. "We are simply telling you the consequences of continued aggression. We do not want to use this threat. We want peace. We have always wanted peace. But we will protect our people at any cost." She looked around the chamber one final time. "For 10,000 years, you have been the apex predators of this galaxy. You have never faced a species that could fight back. You forgot what it was like to be afraid, to be vulnerable, to face an enemy that could truly hurt you." She smiled. It was a small smile, but it carried the weight of 2 centuries of preparation and millions of years of human evolution. "Let this be a reminder. The universe is vast and full of wonders, but it is also full of dangers. You are not the most powerful thing in existence. You are not the final word in evolution. Somewhere out there, something is always watching. Something is always waiting." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her officers followed. "We came from she said over her shoulder. "We survived ice ages and plagues and predators and each other. We clawed our way to the stars through blood and fire and endless struggle. And we did not do all of that just to be harvested by species who think they own the galaxy." She paused at the door. "You spent conquering the weak. You forgot how to face the strong. Now you have met something that will not bow, will not break, and will not surrender." Her smile widened. "Welcome to the new age of the galaxy. We are humanity, and we are very glad to meet you." She walked out, leaving the galactic conquered in stunned silence. The vote was held 3 days later. It was unanimous. Earth was accepted as a full member of the conquered. The harvesting programs were officially ended. The hostages were released, returned to their traumatized but alive. And across the galaxy, a new phrase entered the common vocabulary. When someone wanted to describe a situation that had seemed hopeless but turned into victory, They would say it had gone human. It meant that the weak had become strong, the prey had become predators, the victims had become masters of their own fate. The galaxy had mocked humanity's warning. They had laughed at the primitive apes who dared to challenge the stars. No one was laughing anymore.